So we have with us Lieutenant Detective Patrick Glynn, who's a 34-year veteran of the Quincy Police Department. He oversees their naloxone program. He oversees their, how they police on the streets and how they work with people as opposed to throwing them and, tossing them in jail. In 2013, the Obama administration gave him the Advocate for Action Award because of the work he was doing in Quincy. And I've asked him to come talk about law enforcement and how it has evolved its strategies over the last, over the years, and particularly over the last decade, to deal with the opioids and addiction crises. Lieutenant Glynn will present, and then we'll have time for questions. So I want to welcome you, Lieutenant Glynn, and turn it over to you.
All right, great, thank you. Glad to be here and be part of the program. I'll probably just start out with, I will try to do my best to pronunciate all my R's, okay? Since I see people from across the country, it's always some of the feedback I get. But realistically, I'm gonna go through a PowerPoint program, about 20 minutes or so. I kind of give you the background from where we started and how we grew and where we are today. And as we went through the time frame, things changed dramatically for us with the public, with other law enforcement agencies throughout our own county and then throughout the country. I'll start quickly from the beginning. We ran into a lot of obstacles back in 2010. We became the first police department in the country to train and deploy naloxone out in the street. And we had some obstacles. We had to take a look at Good Samaritan laws, protection for the officers and so forth. And we also had to look at the fact that society wasn't ready for police officers to be administering medication because they always looked at us as enforcers of the law as opposed to people that were out there to really assist. And we can go to the next slide now, please. Actually, 2 slides. Okay, with Quincy model back in, and then we advanced to 2013 when the Obama administration, through the Office of National Drug Control Policy, awarded us the Quincy model. They stated it was the Quincy model. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And one more, please. And basically what we came up with an acronym. I know there's a lot of acronyms everywhere, but prevention, education, treatment, enforcement, and it was all to reduce the fatalities, the overdoses, and also to understand the fact that people relapse. And we want to have them into recovery and re-enter the community. We want to put them back on the street, back in their homes. So our prevention portion was a media blitz for people to feel free to call 911. And that was a statewide effort. And once that was out there, we were inundated with calls. People were no longer afraid to call the police for assistance when someone was overdosing. They were no longer afraid to say, hey, my friend is overdosing here. Prior to that, they would try and dance around it, so to speak, and just say someone was having trouble breathing. The education was a Good Samaritan law. Many states now have one. Back 10 years ago, not every state had one. So that gives the protection to the individuals. We amended our Good Samaritan law in Massachusetts to incorporate anyone that was trained on naloxone would be able to freely administer it to their training limits and not be held liable. And the T, obviously the treatment, no longer handcuffs, and we use naloxone. We're not out to arrest every individual. It makes absolutely no sense to put this person into the criminal justice system when they need to go to treatment. Enforcement, yes, we're still enforcing. We're out there arresting the drug traffickers, but not the people that have a substance use problem, because they do not need to enter the criminal justice system. And again, as I said, we want to have them reunited with the family and also reduce their relapse, but understand the fact that people are going to relapse. That is part of recovery. The next slide, please. Now, we had a huge, the country is inundated with heroin, fentanyl, and so forth. In the Northeast and Massachusetts specifically, we don't see a huge heroin problem any longer. It's been replaced with fentanyl. 84% of our deaths are all fentanyl related. 95% of the seizures of drugs that we bring in have fentanyl in them. Fentanyl is now taking over the heroin market. And thus, We have overdoses that are going from seconds to minutes, as prior with heroin, it was minutes to hours. We have fentanyl being discovered in cocaine and in meth. And meth is one of the biggest problems we have now, again, in the Northeast. Before, it was very, very rare that we would have a meth problem. Now it's popping up everywhere. I call it the new kid on the block in Massachusetts. And we have a huge spike in the counterfeit substances, whether they're pills made to look exactly like pharmaceuticals or powder. So we call it buyer beware. Now, the powder portion, heroin historically is brownish color in Massachusetts area. Fentanyl is white, but we now have people that are drug traffickers. They're coloring the fentanyl so it looks like heroin so they can sell it. Fentanyl is actually much cheaper than heroin on the street. Fentanyl is. And as I talked about before with the naloxone, our first year that we had naloxone out in our cruisers, the officers on the street, we reduced our death rate by 66%. Have the next slide, please. Next slide. It's transitioning very slowly. So the last slide, that's fine that we went through that one. Well, that was just the different formulas in naloxone that are out there. We're using the new 4 milligram spray up the nostril, much easier for the officers to utilize and to the general public to utilize. This little recovery model that I put together here is just showing the law enforcement naloxone on the street to get the individual to the hospital. Okay, we went back to that one. We could advance to the other portion, please. Now, I'll talk quickly as this goes. Unfortunately, we got some technical issues on our end. And to get them into a treatment facility, then a transitional facility, basically a step down rehab, and get them ready for their home visits. And when I talk about home visits, once they're back in the community, and we address this as a multidisciplinary approach, we do home visits. Have the next slide, please. The home visits basically consist of officers in plain clothes in an unmarked police unit, along with an outreach worker, a clinician, are going to the homes of people that have overdosed. And that's happened within the first 24 hours. That we know that they've been released from the hospital. The officers will show up there. They'll bring new materials, reference material. They'll also bring the naloxone, which will train the family and the individual, and leave the naloxone there. That is so the family starts to heal together. We have programs that the families can go into together or go in individually. They've learned, and they were shocked to know that the police were able to come with those benefits and show them that there is life beyond living with someone that has a substance use disorder, meaning that there are other agencies out there that are willing to help them. They just need to call. And they were totally unaware of that before. So we like to take a look at the home visits where we're making the family heal together, the individual and the family members. Next slide, please. And what we ended up doing in 2018, we had what was called protective law options before. We could only take somebody into the police station in a non-criminal aspect for alcohol use only, or bring them to a detox and bring them home. But what we found is we're going through this, that we had no authority to bring someone to the hospital. VMS showed up and they directed the person to go to the hospital. That individual could sign off against medical advisement, AMA. So what we did, we were able to establish a new, what I call an enhanced law, protective custody for any substance. And the purpose is to protect the individual or the public from injury. Many times when someone is reversed on the street with naloxone, their overdose, their drug can come back within 30 minutes or so. And that individual can re-overdose and pass away, or they can get into a vehicle and drive away. And we wanted to prevent that. So our assistance with EMS is to bring that individual to a medical facility only. And that's where our involvement ends. This has been a godsend, actually. It's really prevented a number of tragedies where someone would re-overdose and pass away, or get into their vehicle and drive down the street and get involved in an accident. because we didn't have the laws at that time. So since 2018, it's been proven to really assist us in helping the people. And as you see, the theme that we're going through here is that we enforce the laws when we need to, but we also inform the public that we're there to help them. And everything that we do when we show up at a scene is for the individual first. We can always deal with any criminal aspect later on. And also within our Good Samaritan law, I spoke of earlier when we amended it, we also do not arrest anyone for possession charges of narcotics, meaning personal use quantity. And that has also inundated us with 911 calls where people are calling us for assistance. They're no longer afraid of being arrested. Go to the next slide, please. So as we go through, we talk about, it's going to come through, we'll come through in a second. This one here is talking about our protective custody and a little bit more on the fact that when we take a look at our home visits, which is realistically what I want to get across, we've done about 450 home visits, and those visits, 94% of the time we've been successful, which means we've been able to get into the home and actually help the individual, train them with the naloxone, as I said earlier, provide resources to the families, and for them to actually access those. And again, our whole goal is to heal the family and the individual, to get them back into society and re-enter their family. But we also have a reduction in what I call collateral crime. The motor vehicle breaks, the purse snatchings, the small larcenies, all of those things where someone that has a substance use disorder is looking to get quick money to go out and buy additional drugs. We've seen that drastically reduce once we have the individual in a program that's helping them and reintroducing them to their family. Now, the busy side of this slide, the reality of misuse, I only went back to 2013 because we're going to see some dramatic jumps. Now, this is one community, the city of Quincy, Massachusetts. And we have, I could really put out a broad net countrywide, and we see the deaths that are happening all the time and the amount of overdoses. Now, I like to kind of drill it down into one community and show you, since our inception, that 2015 was a bad year, but look at 2016, 2017. They drastically increased with the amount of overdoses that we saw here in Quincy. And the R's represent the fact that how many people were revived or reversed. And then unfortunately, have fatalities. Now, 2019 and so far 20 and right now 21, we're drastically reducing. That is a direct result of naloxone being available over the counter, so to speak, at a pharmacy. Someone can walk in and actually purchase it right away without an issue. Naloxone is also being co-distributed with other narcotics, and the availability on the street through outreach programs for individuals. Now, that would be outstanding if we could keep those numbers down, but truthfully, I believe they're a little skewed only because that naloxone is available to everybody widespread in Massachusetts and many, many states. Each state is taking a different look at it. I've been to 45 states, assisting them in programs and also starting up their naloxone programs. And some of the laws have to be adjusted just a little bit. Now we take a look up until April 1st of this year with only 36 overdoses. That's outstanding, but these are the overdoses that come through the 911 system. Someone calling for an ambulance and looking for assistance with the police. So we do understand that in reality, there are a number of other overdoses that are not being, unfortunately, logged in so we can have the proper data. But the deaths are still down for us. Now that's not nationwide. Nationwide, we see a huge increase, especially when we get into the next slide with COVID issues. Go to the next slide, please. We're going to see a number of issues as far as law enforcement and the citizens working together and the drug traffickers. We have present terms, we call them a family member or person, substance disorder, poisoning, naloxone recovery, reentry, as I've stated earlier on the right side. Now, before someone would be called an addict, a junkie, we humanized it. We took a whole holistic view of looking at this individual because they are someone's family member. They're someone's son, daughter, mother, father, even grandparent. We've had the eldest, put it that way, the most seasoned person that we've had that overdosed on a narcotic has been 68 years old. That is dramatic. But then obviously going to the other end of the scale, we've had people, unfortunately, that were 8 years old that overdosed, but naloxone was able to help them. But the concerns we now have are concerns for officer safety, EMS safety, and also our canines, because the drug traffickers are planting fentanyl within the vehicles and on themselves. So the officer or EMS, excuse me, or EMS are going to be accidentally exposed to this and possibly overdose. We have not had that happen here in Quincy. There have been some instances throughout Massachusetts, but they've been deemed that they were not an actual overdose because of the substance. But we have had issues with canines. So all of our canine officers carry naloxone, not only for the general public and for them, but also for the canine, because the mechanics will still work the same. It will reverse the canine. Next slide, please. Okay, the challenges. Next slide, please. Now, pre-COVID and active COVID, I guess we can call it, we always use universal precautions of face-to-face with the substance use disorder, face-to-face with the families. They've changed a little bit, resources in joint healing and reentry program. But now we're into complicated precautions. When COVID first started, the gowns, the gloves, the masks, everything that every person, was doing, we were trying to do that, but also we were doing it, but also in conjunction with our fire department and our ambulance department. So it was taking some time for people to gown up and then to doff off their gowns and decontaminate. So we took another look at the view of our face-to-face with the substance disorder person. We now contact them by phone and see what they need and if they want us to come by. Some people still had us come by and we would put on the proper gear and so forth. But we did a lot of phone contact, and that really broke the ice with the individuals and the family members. Again, we're basically customer orientated if we take a look at it from that aspect. And the product that we want to deliver is a healthy individual and whatever resources that we can provide to them. And we have, during our home visits, taken someone from the home at their request and put them right into a program. And beds were very, very scarce at the time, but it worked very well. We have an embedded mental health clinician with us who can actually go through some of the procedures and get the individual right in. We have the phone calls, the follow-up contacts afterwards with the joint healing, and we're doing the same, but obviously it's a little bit different with the phone contact. We can't wait till the day we get back to the face-to-face, because that's where we're going to really be able to help the individuals. Next slide, please. Now, as I stated, we went countrywide. We drilled down into the city of Quincy. Now we're going to kind of drill back out a little bit and open the lens to take a look at in Norfolk County, which has 28 communities here in Massachusetts, representing about 400,000 people. We have a live database where anyone that overdoses within Norfolk County, the 28 communities, their information is put into a database. So if an individual that lives in Quincy is in the next town over and overdoses, I am going to know about that, and we're going to set up a home visit. And vice versa. If someone from another community overdoses in Quincy, they're automatically going to be notified through the database that that individual overdosed, and they're going to set up a home visit also. So just give you a rundown. There was a sample of 637 overdoses in 2020. The breakdown, male, female, obviously majority of male. Fatals are 14%, 10% on the female side. Non-fatals obviously represented the lion's share of the overdoses, and we come down to our numbers. But the purpose of this slide is showing that 28 communities were able to come together and do the database. Now, the home visits are not all the same, because one size does not fit all, as I like to say. We tailor make every situation in the city of Quincy that works for our population. The next town over, I've always suggested to them, take whatever you'd like from our program, put it into yours, and tailor make it for your population. Because we can't just cookie cut it. And as I said, one size does not fit all. We have to adapt, and we've continuously adapted throughout the program and over the years. We've gone from training the officers to making it part of their yearly training. It is now all into the police academy where the recruits get naloxone training. We've spread it through the county, we've spread it out through the country, we've adapted some of the laws, we've instituted home visits, and all of that has been fluid. And we move that straight along. Next slide, please. We're also incorporating a number of other counties within the state of Massachusetts that we have 6 counties. We have 14 counties in the state. And right now we have 6 counties that are online with the database that we can converse with as far as someone that's overdosing, which is outstanding. Now the financial cost, these prices can be adjusted obviously geographically throughout the country, but this is what the cost per overdose in the city of Quincy, taking the time and what it would cost for the police officer, the ambulance, fire department, the emergency department, roughly, we'll round it up $6,000 per overdose. Now, if we took that times 300 or 400 overdoses in the city of Quincy per year, that's an extraordinary amount of money that if we can reduce this by working with the family, getting the person into programs, not only will we reduce our collateral crime, we could take some of the funds that are being expended on the overdose and put it back into treatment. And that's what we're trying to do. And that was the word that we were trying to spread out. And the Obama administration said, hey, that really made a lot of sense, that if we try and get people into programs, we'll be able to do a much better job of what we do, is help people, not just arrest them. So we were able to change. The next slide, please. We were able to change the mindset, not only of the officers, okay, but also our population, where no longer do people think that we're just coming to a scene to arrest someone. They know that we're coming there to help them, to assist them in any way that we can. And we're still changing that. Everything changes as we go around. There's absolutely, again, not one size fits all. And the perception of law enforcement has dramatically changed in Massachusetts, and specifically in the Quincy area and surrounding communities. And that's an outstanding thing, because we're there for the people and we're there for everyone. We don't pick and choose who we respond to. We don't pick and choose who we treat. We treat them all the same. We treat them as a person. And hopefully that continues on and continues on, and we get that individual back into society. So with that, not all of our teams, if you can see the screen, hopefully I went through with the good graphics. These are some of our patches. Not all of our Massachusetts teams are doing great, but we hope to get back on top again. So if you see the Sox and the Celtics and the Bruins and the Patriots,
all right,
we'll do our best to come back in, get some more rings and so forth.
Yeah,
I'd like to open it up to questions, anything at all.
Can we talk about the Red Sox and the Patriots and things like that?
Whatever you want to do.
All right. No, so well, let's just go to Q&A. Do me a favor, Lieutenant. Let's try your video and see if it works. If it's still sketchy, we'll have you go back to just audio. But we will start with Kyle and then go to Alva.
Thank you for making time for us today, sir. A lot of the rationale you've listed for the changes that Quincy has made are also some of the same rationale that others have suggested for perhaps opening up safe injection sites like are seen in Canada. I know one of the cities I used to cover, Burlington, Vermont, has had that debate, as well as some of the medication treatment discussion. What are your thoughts on the idea of a safe injection site where addicts could use, and where perhaps their drugs could be tested, given the discussion you had about other drugs like fentanyl being in cocaine, fentanyl being in what someone might assume is heroin?
But philosophically, I'm not 100% sold on safe injection sites. I'm more in tune with getting people off of the drugs and getting into the program. But with that being said, there is value in those. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We have partnered with our Department of Public Health, where we have a team that goes out with them, and they go and they test drugs out on the street. They'll go to an area, the hotspot, so to speak, and they've been doing this now for about 8 months to collect some data. And their data is actually showing what seizures of drugs are, that everything, there's a poly drug in just about everything. There's the fentanyl is mixed with the meth, is mixed with cocaine, the counterfeit pills that are out there. And they are educating the public through this program. And once it's done, it's about another 3 months or so for a 12-month collection of the data and to see where we're going to go with that. But we are out there helping them with that aspect of it. You know, our philosophy is that if someone has drugs on them, we're going to seize the drugs and get them help, but not arrest. Because to me, it doesn't make any sense. I've been doing this probably way too long. 36 years as a police officer, and all we did was bean count before. And no longer, you know, are we bean counting. We want to get people the assistance they need.
All right, so we'll go next to Alva. Is it Alva Amwan?
Alva Amwan.
Alva Amwan, and then we'll go to Madeline, Kathy, and Christine. So Alva Amwan. And tell the speaker where you're from.
Sure. My name is Alva Amwan, French. I'm with AJ Plus. It's a digital unit that's part of the Al Jazeera network. My question for you, Lieutenant, is you mentioned in your presentation, you talked about the refocus that you guys placed on, you know, dealing with people who are addicted. And I'm just curious when this actual approach occurred, when you mentioned there was an approach to treating addicts more like human beings. What was the approach before, and why this change? When did that actually occur, and just sort of how you approach dealing with people with addictions in your field?
Great question. Great question. As we started to take a look at a lot of these things before, back about 2008, 2009, we had an individual that was running for the mayor of the city, and he actually went around knocking on everyone's door, wanted to know what the problems in the city were, and they said it was drug use and drug sales. Okay, and that individual went on, and he ended up becoming mayor, and that was his platform. Along the way, there was a woman whose son who had a very serious addiction, and he overdosed 3 or 4 times. And the ambulance and the fire department and the police showed up, and she said, "Don't you have naloxone?" And they says, "No, we don't. We don't have that." They had to wait for the paramedics to arrive in order to administer that. She went knocking on the mayor's door and said, "Hey, my son overdosed, but the police department and the ambulance and the fire department didn't have this." So that was the perfect storm when the mayor came to the police department and said, "Hey, what's the story with naloxone?" At the same time, Massachusetts Department of Public Health was looking at our death rate, which was starting to skyrocket. And we all partnered together. And that was probably the tipping point right there, where our deaths met the criteria to get into this pilot program to train the officers. And the officers were a little, as I said in the beginning, they were a little leery of it. But once they saw it work and the immediate effects of it, they all changed their tune. We also had a few officers lose their children to overdoses, which obviously again changed. And the fire department also had some children that lost. And no matter how large a community is, when we start losing the children, that remains the focus. So that's when we really kind of retooled everything, and it took off wildfire. Like, people are saying, well, just a change from an addict, right, to a person. That's a person. That's someone's child. From a drug to a poisoning. All right, that overdose is literally a poisoning. So we took it like that, and we kind of changed some things around. And people said, yes, that's semantics, but I don't believe so. It's taking a look at the same situation with a different lens, and coming out at the other end was the solution, that everyone was being treated the same way. And that started, as I said, back in 08, 09, and now we are knocking on the door, well, a quarter of the way through 2021, and it's taken off wildly throughout the country, as I said. The obstacles that were there before are changing, okay? The laws are being amended. States are coming on board much more than they did before because of the death rate. And that's what we have to take care of. So in a nutshell, that's my response to your question. I hope I answered it on all the particular points that you had.
Well, I just wanted to just clarify, because when you say you started losing the children, about what percentage of those employees in the fire, EMS, and police departments are non-white? If the impetus to change your tactics to humanize the addicts, how many of those people are actually non-white people on your police force or on your EMS force who are losing children to addiction and opioids?
Well, the ambulance company is a private company, so I'm not sure what their ratio is. As far as the police department and the fire department, we were primarily a Caucasian department. That is dictated by civil service law, that we have to take people at certain, as it goes down the line on entry-level exams. So I don't have a specific number for you as far as that goes, but what it was that changed everything, it wasn't the race of an individual. It was a problem that really came to light with an individual that pushed it and said, why don't we carry that? And that was a very good question. Nobody had an answer in the beginning. And then that's when the Department of Public Health said, we've been watching the death rate of opiates, and we had a very high level of them, and it all came together. It had nothing to do with age, nothing to do with sex, and nothing to do with race. It was the fact that people were dying in large numbers.
Is the population of Quincy predominantly white then, or is it?
We're probably, I'd say 15% are Black, 30 to 35% are Asian, and the remainder are Caucasian, primarily, with a very small amount of Hispanic population.
Okay, thank you. That's my last question. Thank you.
All right, so we have several people in line. We have Madeline, Kathy, Christine, Barbara, Stephen, Georgia, Andrea, Kyle, and Danielle. So try to keep, we have 15 or more minutes, so we want to make sure I get everybody. So try to keep the questions, fairly tight to one question, and we'll go to Madeline first.
Yeah, hi. I'm in Boise, Idaho, and I cover the Mountain West region. I was just wondering how you got so many communities to work together there, specifically because here, of course, if you have to ambulance someone to another county, the other county is paying. So it's like, how do you get these counties to work together that have different financial issues, maybe hundreds of miles of difference where you ambulance a person to?
Oh, we're a very urban area. So as far as the counties go, that's just for the database. All right, so the database is very simple to expand to another county, because they're just coming on board. So we're doing that all electronically. Each community, city or town, still runs their own police department and ambulance service. So it's not as if we're going to be traveling hundreds of miles. More often than not, in this general area, the response time for an ambulance is about 3 to 4 minutes. I know in very other areas, you could be looking at 25 to sometimes 45 minutes. So that's the beauty that we have here. And that's why I always say that you cannot take the template of our program and just replicate it somewhere else. It has to be adjusted for the specific community, whether the diversity, the population, and the geographic area of it, and how that's going to play into everything as far as,
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, no, totally. I was just wondering how you got them to work together anyways. Obviously, we're very different here, but how did you get people to work together?
Well, the same common cause, a very persuasive individual I am, I guess, but we were able to do it. And we also had the stakeholders on board. We had the politicians, we had the administration of the police departments, we had the administration of the fire department, and we all kind of worked together. We sat down at the table and we brought in Department of Public Health, outreach workers, and that's a very odd dinner table when we bring all those entities together. And they even kind of chuckled at it. And we met again, we met again, and we met again. And everything just clicked, because the center point made the most sense. Why aren't we carrying it? Well, the law said, well, we can change that. We can work on changing it. And I think a tremendous amount of work was done in the very infancy stage to bring us to where we are today. And as I said, is traveling around to different states. Every state is a little bit different. To be a police officer in Massachusetts, you have to be certified as a first responder and CPR. So we have a better understanding than some other communities or other states did as far as what an overdose is and how the training goes.
Gotcha.
So we
Thank
set
you.
the pace. You're welcome.
All right, Kathy.
Good morning, Lieutenant Glynn. Thanks for taking my question. This is new to me, so forgive my ignorance when it comes to these issues. I was really curious to know, I know alcohol use among older adults, they tend to use alcohol. I was wondering if because you'd mentioned that you had somebody who was 68, so I was wondering if you've seen a shift in older adults, people 65 and older, using drugs like fentanyl and sort of veering away from alcohol, or is that just a one-off, a rare occurrence? And if so, why are they shifting away from something that's probably, is it more accessible or is it a cost issue?
Well, I mean, the addiction portion of it, the cost issue, the drugs are much cheaper. But these were long-term substance use individuals. I'm talking people that have been doing drugs for 20, 25 years. So that's where it's going to. What is somewhat encouraging that we're seeing less and less people between the ages of 18 and 24 overdosing and passing away. So we're seeing less of that, but we're seeing more on the other end. But I think it's because their bodies have deteriorated to a point where they can no longer survive. And that's why we're seeing some of the elder people dying on us. But they have not been able to shake that habit, unfortunately.
Okay, Christine.
I have questions related to just who's funding the initiative to do the home visits, to do the naloxone, the training. Like, where's the money coming from? Because for an area where maybe they're like, this is great, but who's going to pay for it? What pitch do you make to them about how to get it paid for? And are you seeing a return on investment or anything like that that you can speak to?
Oh, well, a good answer is, it's kind of funny, just popped in my mind. Actually, the individual has a substance use disorder, is paying for it themselves through their taxes. The naloxone is extremely inexpensive now. It did spike in cost, but it's inexpensive now. And there's many ways that can be funded, is through large corporations making donations, pharmaceutical companies reducing the price and providing it, and also just being part of our EMS system. Right now we have a grant with the Department of Public Health, but if that grant all of a sudden is exhausted, our EMS system has already stated that they will take the burden of providing that. As far as the home visits, that's the officers' jobs. They'll go out. We have a crew of officers that are ones that are very, very interested in doing it. We're not just sending any officer. We want someone that has the passion, a stake in it. And those are the officers that are going, and they just enjoy it dramatically. It's just another part of what they do for their work. So cost-wise, I mean, we look at this, we're all on a Zoom, right? Cost-wise, it would have been phenomenal if we all went to one central spot, the cost factors. So in the future, this might be an easy way to follow up with someone at home also.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes. I got like 6 questions in here. So kind of think in terms of one question and a 60 or 90-second answer, but we'll go to Barbara next.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Barbara Morse. I work at the NBC station in Rhode Island.
Yep, and my neighbor.
We cover Bristol County, Massachusetts. How are these departments there faring in tackling this problem?
Bristol County's getting on board with the database. Plymouth County, which is obviously right next door, they have their own database. They actually initiated a database, and we kind of took a look at that in our district attorney's office, replicated that, and then made it the fine tuning for this county, Norfolk County. Since we're all very close, Norfolk, Bristol, Plymouth counties are very, very close in location. But they were all getting on, and the way that they are all getting on board with this is that we have a central training system in place for police officers in Massachusetts. So this training is statewide, Municipal Police Training Committee. This curriculum is part of their first responder and CPR program, which we have to be in Massachusetts. And that training goes right across the board. So whether or not someone has an actual naloxone program in their department, they're going to know how to utilize this. If they come across the scene and an individual has it, they're going to be able to assist their EMS, whether it's fire or private. So that's the big blanket, I call it, that every officer, that's our foundation. And then we build off of that. And the databases are a little bit difficult when we get into smaller communities that may not have a hospital.
All right, next question to Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant, for being here today. I had a question. Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that you had some early barriers or some particular issues with healthcare providers when you started your initiative. I was wondering what types of issues that you ran across and how has the relationship with healthcare providers evolved over the past decade?
It was, like I said, it was just a little bit rocky in the beginning because people didn't feel as though police officers were qualified to administer medication. Everyone had the false impression. I call them myths, and then we just kind of dispelled those myths. Everyone thought that this was an injectable. This is a nasal spray. And just as the problems kind of subsided, the nasal spray advanced. It used to be a multi-stage where we would actually have to assemble it. Now it's pre-assembled and it's just a squared up one nose, just as if you're using an antihistamine or something on that idea. So once that obstacle was down, and then we showed them that we had a training program in our foundation base already, a lot of people didn't understand that we already do just about everything except administer that spray. And that was the obstacle both with the medical field and with the officers, thinking of accidental sticks and so forth. Once everybody was fully informed, the myths just kind of all fell apart. And then we changed our Good Samaritan law and we amended that. And other states have also kind of got on board with that. Others that didn't have one instituted one, others did amend it. And it just became, I would say right around 2012, 2013, everything just became, that's part of the day, that's part of the job, that's part of the training. And everybody came together with it. The ambulance service, they loved it because the police usually end up getting to the scene prior to them or prior to the fire department, depending on the tier system that you have. And we already had a dose into the individual, so it made their job a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Georgia.
Hi, thank you very much for your time today. My name is Georgia Kobanis. I'm a reporter at the Detroit Free Press. I'm wondering when your team goes back 24 hours later, or I guess now they're doing phone calls 24 hours later, what sort of reception do they receive? Do they encounter denial or are they pretty much embraced? And also, how has that changed during the pandemic?
We had a little bit of everything, as you're saying. We're doing a primary phone call now to make sure that they want us to drop by. Things are easing up a little bit with the vaccine and so forth and people being a little bit more comfortable. As far as the initial was a shock, not in a bad shock, but a good shock, like, why are you here? Well, we're here to present you with some more literature. We're here to give you options that you can make your choices from. And we're here to train you in the naloxone if you want. These were all offerings. Nothing was forced on anyone. And once at the door, that they realized that about 94% of the time, the officers were able to get inside because they're in plain clothes, so it's a softer approach. You're not bringing that stigma of the police are at the house. You know, nobody really wants a marked police cruiser in front of their home. And then the family members. So it really depended on who opened the door. Was it a family member or was the individual that overdosed? If it was the individual that overdosed, they were a little bit put off because they thought we were there for some type of enforcement. And when they realized it, they just very much at ease. The family, they were shocked because they never thought the police would show up to talk to them about a problem that we might have a solution for. So it was very refreshing.
Thank you.
All right, so we have Andrea, Kyle, Danielle, and Brian. 4 minutes, so try to keep them fairly tight. We can try to get them all in. Andrea.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andrea De Leon. I edit this beat at NPR and I happen to live in the state of Maine, so another neighbor. You mentioned the prevalence of methamphetamine and fentanyl containing meth, et cetera. And I'm wondering how the change in the drugs that people have out on the streets is changing your response. I know that meth sort of recovery can be pretty rocky and not as we may not have the best science on that yet.
Right, it's like, I call it opposite day when they put the meth in with the fentanyl. Because when we revive someone with the naloxone, we now have a violent person. We never had a violent person before. That was our checkoff sheet to Department of Public Health, and it said, was the person violent? Well, that was the only box, so the officer always checked yes. And we added confused, and that dropped down to 96% were confused and only 4% were violent. But we're seeing that turn with the meth because they're waking up violent. It is a very difficult situation with the drug trends that are out there. So everyone is taking the precaution that no matter what they're touching, even my trained detectives and the narcotics unit are always wearing gloves and protective masks because they're believing everything is fentanyl. Even the Percocet 30 milligram, they're blue, but they're fentanyl. There's a lot of things out in the street. So the combination of the fentanyl and the meth are called goofballs now. I don't know if that totally answers your question, but we try and we go with the flow of the trends of the drugs that are out there. We take more precaution. We don't do any street testing itself. It all comes in the controlled atmosphere as far as for enforcement side of things like that.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think I was up in Maine about 04, 05 with the police department. We put on a presentation up there too, right in Portland.
Okay, Danielle.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. My name is Danielle, and I am a tribal reporter, and I'm based in Oregon. And in December, Oregon became the first state in the nation to decriminalize personal drug possession. And it sounds like what you're doing is somewhat similar, but without the law to back it up. And so I was curious what your thoughts were on decriminalizing personal possession, and if you think it would help with public trust.
Well, with the public trust, it would probably, only really come from a small group, the public trust, as far as that. Philosophically, I'm against it. And I only say that because I think we have enough checks and balances right now where we're not going to arrest an individual for a small quantity. If we just go and decriminalize it right across the board, I think we could have some bigger issues with that being, the first hurdle for that drug, and then what drug would come next and next and next. We see it with marijuana in Massachusetts, the THC, all the edibles and so forth. We're seeing some of the pitfalls with legalizing the marijuana portion of it. We just had a few children in another community overdose because someone tainted some muffins that they ate and also some candy. But I mean, there's pitfalls with it all. I'm not totally in favor of that personally, but I can see where it is of value to some.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, you had a question in chat?
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Brian Mann at NPR. The program and the home visits sound great. I guess my question is, why use police for this? I mean, there is obviously concern in some populations about interactions with the police, especially in some Black communities, but also immigrant, undocumented communities. So I guess what's the philosophy behind, you talk about interacting with social services, why not just say, look, we're the police, we know what we do, let's have other people making these home visits who don't have that tension that exists between arrests and those other functions. What are your thoughts about that?
Outstanding. I'm glad you brought it up. Because I failed to mention it earlier. Crawl, walk, run scenarios. We started it out to go with the individuals, with the team, in order for them to have a sense of safety in the event that something occurred. What our whole plan is to have the social agencies take this entire program over and go do the home visits. We'll give them the information. They'll go and do the home visit themselves with an outreach worker, clinician, and a few other counselors. So that is in the works. So that's why I stated it's a great question. And I understand your concerns that some people may not want to open the door if they're undocumented and so on. But that's the beauty of curtailing a program like this to your specific community, because what your community feels. You know the heartbeat of it. But that is our main goal, is to start to have the police remove themselves and have the social agencies go forward.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just try to do a bit of scheduling on the fly. Our next speaker, Dr. Tawhid Zaman, is here. We're trying to get a couple more questions in here. Do you have a hard stop at 10:30 your time, or can you go to 10:35?
I can be flexible.
Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions here with Lieutenant Glynn. We'll just a couple more, and then we'll start Dr. Zaman at 12:35 our time. So let's go for the next final two questions. Adriana.
Hi, my name is Adriana. My question is obtaining funding for the naloxone. You know, when this first began, did you find your did you have trouble, I guess, getting money for this and explaining, you know, like why there was a need for it? Because I think in the beginning, I think a lot of people, you know, the stigma attached to it. What were some of the challenges?
Well, getting the funding in the beginning was very simple because it was funded by the Department of Public Health with a grant. As we've continued through, they've given some grant money still out. We still get a few dollars. But for the city of our size, between supplying the fire department and the police department, you take a guess how much you think it cost.
I have no idea.
Okay. About $8,000 a year. That's all the medication costs.
Wow.
About $8,000 a year. So people thought it's an astronomical amount of money. Now, granted, the seed money, as I call it, to get 2 doses out for every single officer is a little substantial at first, about $10,000. But to continue that on, it's about $8,000 a year. So it's not an extraordinary amount of money when we're talking about lives that are being saved. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we would have lost at least 60 or 70% of the people if the officers did not have naloxone out in the street. Now, I know that that's not the same, you know, in every community or state that you might have that luxury of getting that initial grant. But again, if you go to large corporations willing to donate, that they will do that. Different groups, different clergy. I mean, everybody is willing to donate something, and it's not that expensive when we're really talking about, you know, breaking it down and what it's for. Now, on the flip side, the cost that we're saving is astronomical when we take a look at how much crime is being reduced on the petty stuff, the shoplifting, purse snatches, and car breaks. When we get that individual into a program, we see a dramatic reduction in those.
Okay, and with that, one final question. This is from Cheryl. I'll just ask this, and if we could just get it's a complicated question, but if there's a short answer, give it to us. Wish we had more time. Wondering if heroin and cocaine users get the same treatment.
I saw that question. I was going to comment on it. Yes, they do, because the social agencies that we bring don't distinguish between any drug. They're looking at trying to assist that substance use disorder person with anything that they have. Our specific thing, obviously, was the opiate. But if it trails off into something else, we'll definitely give them as much assistance as we can, and the social agencies, the outreach workers, will take it from there. So they are getting the same treatment, even though it wasn't the initial goal.